going on, Internet? Eric Van Hult's back again with another e-commerce conversations. I hope all is well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Internet from me, Taylor. What's up, man?
What's up, dude? That is the most energy I've ever seen from you. I imagine that character
high energy.
That guy only also comes out at the other end of the push press bar that I often also my favorite Twitter content of yours.
Yeah, I gotta upload some. I just did a live stream. I've been going to the gym. I'm here in Denmark, and normally I work out in my garage, and I've been baffled by the attire that people choose to wear in the gym. It doesn't seem appropriate. Are you a gym guy or no?
Yeah, I have a gym in my garage. I enjoy it very much. My wife and I are training for our first couples high rocks here in December. Okay. So we try and stay young.
So you probably have more normal attire in there, but let me tell you, if you go to a public gym nowadays, it is something else, man. It is something else.
It's a show. It's a show.
Yeah. Well, for our listeners who didn't catch our previous episode we've done in the past, can you tell them who the heck you are, what the heck you do, especially now, because things have changed?
Yeah. Well, I'm still the same guy. I'm still Taylor Holiday. I'm the CEO of Common Thread Collective. We're an e-commerce marketing agency that helps brands grow predictably and profitably. Been at this for a little over a decade. Yeah, and you're referencing some of the more recent news where we are now a partner of Acacia Investment Group, which is a PE firm that's helping us to turn our little thing into a platform and hopefully expand and continue our onward quest together. So been at this a long time and excited for this next phase.
That's I've been following you for a long time, probably not all 10 years, but I do remember, the recycled baseball gloves. Was that the business?
That's right. Yes, sir. FC Goods.
Yeah, what was it? Was Andrew running that one, or was he running a different one?
Ran it straight into the ground. It was awesome. I only say that because he would. But yeah, no, it was, we, like many agency owners, went on the side quest of trying to launch 100 brands out of pure hubris of thinking you're so smart and you know how to do everything, and was very quickly smacked down like many. But that brand is still very close to my heart, and Andrew, I think, hopes to buy it back one day, but we bought and sold. It was actually one of our more successful ventures, FC Goods. It's a really cool brand.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Andrew Ferris is also a former guest on my show. I've been a guest on his show. Taylor just did an incredible episode, 2 hours long, kind of talking about the deal, everything you went through. A couple things that I wanted to highlight, which I think my listeners might find valuable, is you are one of the few people who ran an ESOP or an employee ownership. Walk me through when you got into that, how you made that decision to get into that, what were the consequences of that action, and just really the whole story.
Yeah, so ESOP is an employee stock ownership program. It's a really fascinating mechanic that allows you to take a third party, in our case a bank, as a lender. So the company functionally takes out a loan to buy the equity from the current shareholders and puts it into a trust that is then managed by a third-party trustee and distributed to the employees pro rata on the basis of their compensation as a percentage of total payroll. So for a simple math, if you made $100,000 and the total payroll was $1 million, every time there was an allocation of shares by the trustee, you would get 10% of those shares. And so you have an obligation. We did a 20% ESOP. So 20% of the company was owned by the employees. And you have, I think, like 3 to 5 years to distribute and allocate all of those shares from within the trust. So you can do that on a regular basis. It's completely tax-free to the employees. So they get a $0 cost basis share. So they get a full share right at no cost to themselves. They don't have to pay for it. There's no tax obligation. It's actually even more liquid than maybe most stock, because if they leave, there's actually a repurchase obligation. So the company actually has to buy the shares back because the shares have to be held by the employees. That's the idea of the ownership. So they can be more liquid than something, which can be a risk to brands because you actually have to carry it as a liability on your balance sheet. And we did that to buy back at a partner. So we had a partner that had left. And so the funding of that allowed us to buy back his shares when he departed. So Owners will also often use it to create some liquidity for themselves as another mechanic. There's a whole community of there are wholly owned ESOPs out there. One of the most famous ones is the King's Hawaiian Rolls. I think they're a wholly owned, employee owned subsidiary. So it's a really cool mechanic that we learned a lot about. It takes a lot of education. It's kind of confusing. There's a vesting schedule and all sorts of mechanics that you have to explain to employees. So I'd say there were pros and cons to the process, but yeah, that was at the end of it when there was the big liquidity event. It was obviously cool to get to share that with a lot of employees.
So a little more details. Are they distributed equally among the employees?
So it's dependent on your salary as a percentage of payroll. So if you make 50,000 and I make 100,000, when the allocation happens, twice as many shares will go to me versus you. So that's just a way of sort of valuing the employee base and allocating the shares consistent with their sort of level or impact. There's also, you can do what are called SARs, which are stock appreciation rights. So you can also introduce other grants on top of it. But on the base level, most ESOP mechanics are allocated by that, the payroll as a percentage of revenue structure.
Okay. And then is that reallocated every year or something like that? Or?
So it's the discretion of the company to decide when it allocates. And you kind of have to decide because you want to always keep a certain amount for future employees. And so there's this balance of not reaching ever allocating all the shares. So we ended up fully allocating because we knew this liquidity event was coming. And so it made sense. There weren't going to be this period of people who didn't get to participate. And so you have an obligation to allocate a certain amount every year. And then you have a certain period or time period to allocate all of them. And so from there, it's discretionary though. And the other interesting thing is that the part of your business that is employee owned is not taxable. So 20% of your corporate profit is not taxed because the government sort of sees it as a mechanism for redistribution somewhat anyways. And so if you're a wholly owned ESOP, you pay zero corporate tax. So it reduces your tax liability. You get an offset when you do the share allocation because it's considered a cost. It's compensation in ways. So there's all sorts of really interesting things that we learned along the way about how this process comes to life.
You as both the owner and an employee with the company, are you also part of that?
That's right.
ESOP?
So you're both an employee beneficiary and a direct shareholder separately. And so one of the things that I'll caution about anybody doing this is that when somebody comes to buy your company someday, this introduces complexity that is not necessarily beneficial to that process because the trustee sort of is a representative. It's a third party that represents the interests of the employees in any process, which isn't a bad thing because you're in both groups. It's just another party to negotiate with. And in many ways, their primary job is just to limit liability to themselves. And so all they really care about is ensuring that no one's going to sue them for, misrepresenting the interests of the employees. So it's an interesting mechanic. We went a little further in that most of the time the employee ownership base doesn't get representation in governance. That's just the mechanic that's just either non-voting shares, but we actually added an employee representative to the board that was elected every year. And so we tried to tie a little bit more to the actual governance, and really underpinning that was a philosophical belief that the people doing the work should own the company. And that's something I definitely believe about any corporation is that you want your equity to be a life force that aims into the company as being used to drive value for the company and should be held by the people doing the work. And so I think there was some additional stuff that we layered on top of it that's not normal to an ESOP that we also tried to bring to life.
I agree with the ownership aspect, but I don't agree with the ownership aspect. If that makes sense.
Say more. I know this is funny. We're gonna wander into an area
just
where
get
probably
bonuses.
you and I diverge.
Yeah. It's make it simple. You do good. You're investing in the business. I'll pay you more money.
I think I totally agree that I think one of the limitations of the ESOP is that it robs people of the actual risk associated with equity that's intended to represent. And so in some ways it's not valued or as impactful as it could be because alternatively, we also had a time period where some employees wrote checks to purchase some shares from another passive partner. And that was actually a way more impactful mechanic because there was actually, you were assigning people both the risk and the reward, which I think is really the power of what entrepreneurship and equity is intended to represent. And when you only do one side of that equation, it's more of an entitlement. It's not actually something that costs them anything. And so the impact is far less for sure.
Yeah. And that's what I agree with. I think there's you and me, we understand the value of entrepreneurship and we love it. It's like brought so much to our lives. And I'll speak for myself, but I imagine that you're the same way. It's like you want to share that with the people you love most, which is the team members. I mean, we love it. I love my team members and I want them to have the same joys that I have. But the reality is like, they just don't see the world the same way we do. Like they
I totally agree. And the only thing I'll caveat to this is that what I actually think the value is about offering programs like this is less about how it changes their present behavior and more that you're inviting them into an educational opportunity between the distinction of capital and labor that can change their life if they're interested. And so it won't guarantee their interest, but I know early on in the very first company I ever worked at, I was granted a very small amount of equity. Okay. It was meaningless and it didn't change my behavior at all, but I got a K1 and I would get this distribution to pay my taxes. And I'd be like, wait a second, I own this much and I got this much. Who's getting the rest of this? How does it all work? Where's the money going? And all of a sudden I realized like, oh, this is how you actually make a lot of money. And so I think being granted that opportunity to explore it opened my eyes as someone who didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family, like didn't really go to college for that or have any intention of it, to really understand that distinction. And so I am very grateful for that. Even though at the time I probably didn't appreciate it, it didn't change my behavior, it did offer me the doorway to beginning to understand the way that I think most people, the real wealth creation is possible.
How many of your team members do you believe had that impact?
I think it'll be sub 10%.
Okay.
So
and then you think they'll get the entrepreneurial bug after this?
I think that it will, receiving a lump sum payment while after doing a bunch of work for a salary is a really big event in people's lives that will make, for some sample of them, go like, I'd like to figure out how to recreate that more often versus trying to increase my salary 15% a year until I die. And so I think there will be some people for whom that makes a meaningful impact.
And you mentioned you get a loan to essentially pay off the owner and transfer it to the employees. How difficult is it to get that loan? Is that, and how do you evaluate the business based on that? Is that
so
based on your operating agreement or?
No, they hire a third-party advisor that values the company and then partners with the bank. But at the end of the day, like the real value of the company is whatever the bank thinks it is, because they're the one writing the check. And that's just going to be on a multiple of historical trailing 12-month cash flow. Like that's how they're going to value it. And that's going to be how much leverage you can create. And what'll happen though is usually the gap between what the third-party valuation is of the shares and what the bank's willing to lend at is carried in a seller note. So the mechanics for the total repurchase can be both debt and cash up front, and then also asking the sellers to carry a note. And so we had a little bit of both because we couldn't take on enough debt to buy out the full amount of shares. It would have been like too difficult to service. And so the mechanics for that purchase also usually involve sellers carrying a note.
Okay. You do it again? Yes or no?
Probably not. Mainly because
no, I mean, I agree.
Mainly because I don't think people understand. It didn't change behavior in the way that I had wanted or hoped it would, and the mechanics of what it caused during the sale process and the complexity it introduces to business operations are like really hard.
Yeah.
So
I also, like back in my day, I used to sell commercial printing, and one of my clients was a wholly owned ESOP. And it was at that level, it was just like drama, bureaucracy, just like all the pat and pats and shaking hands and.
Yeah, you wade very quickly here into like a conversation about socialism, and like what I really sort of, I'll just leave it at this, is there's a book called what is it called? It's about community capitalism. It's about sort of like there's some version of these worlds where, in my opinion, what we've come to sort of feel as a society is that there's something about pure capitalism that seems to concentrate the wealth into too few people, and socialism is broken for all sorts of other reasons, and we're sort of dissatisfied with both, but nobody has the alternative solution. And to me, this just isn't the answer either. And that's like what I'm learned in the process is, but it's like a noble endeavor. There's people that sort of feel the dissatisfaction of these different things and are trying to resolve for it, but no one knows what the answer is. And I'm not sure that there is one.
I think there's multiple different answers. It depends on who you are, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and
Yeah.
how do you align with people who are like-minded. The thing that we've done historically at Beard Brand, I'm doing a segue, is we would leverage YouTube to generate revenue for us. And that revenue, not only did we generate revenue, but our exposure on YouTube drove sales. And as you elegantly referred to it before we hit record, the negative CAC.
Yep.
Let's talk more about that.
Yeah. So one of the big unlocks for us as an agency was this idea of negative CAC. And I forget where I encountered it first. It might have been, we were also talking about Kevin Espiritu, Plant Daddy on Twitter. He may have coined the term. But the idea is that you create media. So in our case, it's a podcast. We make a lot of videos. We have an email newsletter that for a long time, we're just a cost center. That we would create content, we would try to distribute it, and we'd try and drive leads off of it. And that was like effective. And it was, but your marketing is functionally a cost center at that point. And if you want to scale it up, it costs more money. You want to, et cetera, et cetera. But then we realized like, well, these are media assets that somebody would like the distribution access for. There are lots of software vendors in our space that raise lots of money to try and reach lots of folks. And we have some level of authority and audience that we could monetize. And so like you're describing with YouTube, we sort of did the same thing with our digital properties. We took our podcast, our email, our YouTube, my Twitter content and said like, what if we added a layer of monetization of these that would functionally offset the cost of production and the investment and drive our CAC down to zero, or this year they're actually profitable for us. So so when I use the phrase negative CAC, it means that my marketing is a profit center. And so that was a huge unlock that expanded our margin as a business pretty substantially and allowed us to grow a lot more because we were able to basically have turn marketing into a profit center.
Yeah. I mean, it's your content can subsidize your acquisition costs.
That's right. Exactly.
And it's, frankly, I feel like if you're competing against a brand that's doing that, it's going to be really hard. Like, totally. Think about it. If there's someone in your space who's, I think that the guys who are, Isaac with Campai and the sword company, just incredible at creating viral content. He's generating revenue. But I think it was pretty interesting from your perspective, like, you're even going so far as to trying to build like a podcast network, aren't you?
So yeah, we're thinking about this a lot because what I see right now is there's a disproportionate market balance between demand and supply for content from advertisers. So in other words, this is like, there's like an ongoing joke on Twitter that like the same 7 people are promoting everything all the time, right? It's like Sean Frank and, me and you and Andrew. It's like the same small group of people because they're the ones with like a little mini audience that everybody wants to access. It's like Cody from Jones Road and Ash from Obvi. And it's like those 7 people promote every software on earth, right? And it's because there's a lot of software and a lot of dollars and a lot of 3PLs and a lot of other things that are looking for distribution and looking to trade on sort of the authority of these people and their audiences. And so as I look at that, though, what's really fragmented is all of our sales processes for bundling and coming up with great sales packages. I don't know if you have a full sales team. I think you have a partnership inside of the network that you're in. We actually have a sales team, but a lot of people don't. Like Andrew does his own sales, whatever. And so I look at this and go like, we're sort of fragmented, and there's also not an investment into new content being created. Like who's out there going, hey, we will fund a new podcast about XYZ because we have the engine to monetize it. And I know this is like sort of like, this is not a novel idea. I think about what's the group that did this that Spotify acquired. I forget what they're called. But you look at like Bill Simmons' network at The Ringer. Like there's lots of things that you go, oh, you take a bunch of good content creators, you package them together, you build a sales engine in support of it, and you go and you monetize it. And we think there's something there. And I think it's a combination of potentially our own shows, launching more shows, but also potentially partnering and bringing together and leveraging our investment on the sales and marketing side to help you monetize your podcast better, Andrew monetize his podcast better, whoever it might be. Because functionally, this is literally like it's a sales pipeline exercise, just like lead gen is like selling advertising, right? So you got to go build relationships you got to go to Crunchbase and find everybody who's ever raised money and go find 1,000 people to go get, and that's just effort. And a lot of people don't have a resource to go solve that problem.
The other interesting thing is it's kind of the that similar negative CAC idea is kind of the same too, where you can leverage the advertising to help you scale up and grow. Because I think
So that's exactly
you're
right.
talking
Yep.
about pushing the content to get the eyeballs
That's
rather
right.
than just upload it into RSS and to the ether. So
Right, exactly. Because if you think about it, like I'll just use an example of where it makes sense for me. Like one of our partners is Final Loop. I think those guys do a great job with accounting software. Our sort of core marketing message is the overlap of marketing and finance. And so when they sponsor our content, they get access to authority and message where I can affirm that I believe what they're doing is really awesome. And then I also get distribution to their audience, right? So they have an email list and they have a YouTube channel and they have Twitter followers that are the customers that I want to reach too. And so not only do I get monetization, but I also get distribution. So I think there's like this dual win for us in thinking about those kinds of partnerships. And so we want to figure out how to continue to bring value to them as well. And I think you can, if you choose them right, like we don't want to just be like spamming people, whatever software X, like we're trying to be a little bit more thoughtful about it than that to try and amplify what is ultimately our goal, which is to sell services. It's not, our business is not media, it's services.
yeah, and Final Loop, is it Final Loop? Finaloop? I think
Yeah.
that's
I think it's
the
finance.
joke.
Finance loop. So fine loop is how I go about
I
it.
think it's the final loop you ever have. Final loop. I think it's they put on a conference in Austin that we were chatting about, and I think that's the blending too of like, this podcast world, right. the D2C X world, and then the in person and being able to shake hands and build those relationships and not have. I mean, let's be real. You and me are probably getting 50 to 100 emails a day of people trying to sell us stuff, and
right.
I ain't got time for that.
Yeah,
so
right.
You and I, we want to be able to build relationships that we know and we trust, and referrals, in my opinion, are the way to go. Like, we've been having a hard time with Brex. Everybody says go on Mercury. I don't want to waste my time. Like, I know maybe this is not the most efficient thing, but it's like,
yep.
Like if it's working for everybody else, I'm sure we can figure out and making it work.
That's right. And I think, one of the things I was talking about on a podcast recently is that my business has these network effects built into it because of the way my customers buy, that reputation compounded over 10 years actually can't be overcome easily. Because in a commodity business where you're selling jeans or whatever, like I can make an Instagram ad just like you can make an Instagram ad, and we both have sort of the same chance to win the customer. Nobody buys my business through Facebook ads. Like they don't Google search Facebook ads network for, like, if you're a $50 million e-commerce business, somebody who knows somebody who's worked with somebody, and you ask your trusted friends and authority who they work with and what they do. And so that's the buying cycle. So I think also, if you have trust in this community, it's like disproportionately valuable to these vendors because they know that's how customers actually buy. They can't just go run Facebook ads all day long in the same way, because especially on the higher end price points, because it's such a trust ecosystem for referral in terms of how most customers purchase assets or vendors in this space.
You were sharing some good insights before we hit record as well. Like, obviously, you're an agency. Most of my listeners are probably D2C brands. How else are people able to generate, negative AC or drive down negative CAC or drive down the cost of acquisition through these type of events? I've
seen some cool things like Victory. The insoles that are like they bend and they snap back into place. Like, these guys have been doing things like they go to events, they host events they're going to outfit all the athletes at school X. So it's like a B2B sale plus a live event training. And what they do is they go and film all of that content of them training the UCLA volleyball team on inserts for the soles. And that's all of their ad content. It's super high authentic. It's very feels organic. It's real. They get the authority of someone buying it. So what you have is that would normally be sales training, right? Like that would just be a cost center, right? And instead what you do is you use it, and this could be done at live events too, to turn it into your asset development that becomes your Facebook ads that fuels this sort of flywheel of this offset or subsidizing of the cost of production. Similarly, the other example is Alex Hormozy, who's one of the most prolific content creators in our space. He does these giant seminars on the weekends at his facility where people pay a lot of money to come and hear him talk. And guess what he does? He films that content. And so he's getting paid to create the distribution that creates the payment, that creates the distribution, and it becomes this virtuous cycle instead of like what most e-commerce brands do is spend a bunch of money on a production, then go spend a bunch of money on the distribution and hope that it achieves the CAC that they want, right? And that like has no flywheel. Like there's almost no consistent mutual benefit to that process. And it just becomes less efficient over time and more expensive over time. And so I think trying to think through some ways in which you could subsidize the cost of the production in some way is like an important thought exercise for brands to consider.
Well, another reminder in that is the more you are intentionally spending time with your customers, good things will happen. So, not only this, like we spend time with our customers, we use the products with our customers, we watch our customers use the products to see how they apply. You always get like the weirdo who's like, like putting beard oil on their, wherever they shouldn't be putting it. And, you learn a thing or two. And then you get to ask them, and you get that immediate feedback. So there's market research in it, there's content in it, producing it, there's ads, there's the stronger relationship built between those customers and the brand. I mean, you think about a customer who comes to an event, who gets to meet the founder or the VP of marketing or whoever it may be, shake hands and see that there's real people behind this company. What do you think that's going to do for those customers?
Right. You're building little sneezers, to borrow the Seth Godin metaphor, that go out into the world and advocate for you. And it may feel small if it's just a few people a weekend, but you do that for 5 years, and all of a sudden it has like a massive compounding effect. Like it really does. And so I think that's some of the ways in which brands need to think about, while they're also investing in their paid media engine, is like, what is the compounding organic engine that I'm building that it's going to move slower. It's growing rice versus buying rice, right? But you still, if you do that, 5 years from now, you have a really robust engine to offset the inevitability of the CAC challenges. And I think there's not enough thought built into that. And some of it is just like the hyper pace and expectation that people have. Like even across the street. So we share an office here with Skull Candy in Costa Mesa, and across the street is Jack Henry. I don't know. Do you know Kyle at all?
Yeah. Jack Henry. Yeah.
So they have a salon.
I don't know if I need to get him on the podcast. I don't know if I've ever talked with them, but we're connected on.
You guys live in similar worlds. Like,
But
they have a salon across the street. That's their office, right? They're a D2C brand, and they open a salon. Now, if I'm Kyle, the thing that I think he's missing with it is like all their content should be being made every day in there. Their ads should be their customers using the product every day with their artists, and they should turn their stylists into their creators and pay them. Like that's what I would do, is like literally be like, hey, the cost to rent the seat in here is connected to the amount of impressions you drive in a month on the content that you create inside the Jack Henry salon. Like that's the kind of example where now you take a cost center, this space, this rental, this retail floor, whatever, and you create this additional layer of opportunity that drives the engine for paid media and all the other things that you're out doing. Like businesses that do that. Another brand I'm close with is the guys at Driveline Baseball. So Driveline is a baseball training academy that up in the Northeast. That's like one of the best baseball training facilities. They train Shohei Ohtani and some of the Mookie Betts, like some of the best athletes in the world. But they also have an e-commerce business where they sell training devices, bats, balls, etc. And so I recently went up there last summer, and I did a trade where I did 2 days of e-commerce consulting, and they tried to teach me how to be a baseball coach because I don't know how to talk to kids about baseball, and they were helping me. And so what they've done, though, is that they've now really committed to this engine of constant organic content, not talking every time about buy this bat, but like showing the training material in their organic feed, showing data associated with the impact. And it's like that engine of people pay to train there. That creates content. That content creates distribution. That distribution makes ads more efficient. You sell more products. And now that leads to more people training there, leads to more content, now you have a flywheel. And I think that's where right now a lot of brands, their production is just pure cost center. It's just pure cost.
I think there's, you see it with kind of like the brand darlings, like Bruce Bolt,
Exactly.
They had that really good relationship with influencers. And I think you establish those relationships by being authentic, by reaching out to them. There was who else was I going to talk about? Vessi Footwear.
Yep.
They kind of did a spin on it where they would reach out to kind of like super micro influencers. Like, you have let's say you have a friend circle of 12 people. Who's the one cool person and there that is the leader, that they try to find those people and would gift, a pair of vesties to them and a coupon for their friends.
That's right.
And they grew very well. And then LMNT.
Yep.
They've done a great job through, reaching out to community building. And I think it does, if you spend a lot of time on DDCX or you listen to a lot of these podcasts, there's a lot of people who just kind of talk about crank up ads on Meta, crank up ads on, YouTube, TikTok shops, or whatever the hot new thing is. And just from my personal experience, that is just hard, competitive, and borderline unprofitable for pretty much any brand there, unless you're selling like, I don't know, salvation, like
well, or Groons. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I think one of the things that does happen is, like, even today I was listening to Chad from Groons on the Operators podcast, and he gets held up, right? And rightfully so. He's built an incredible business. But the problem is, like, the playbook of like a really high gross margin, massive LTV supplement, in terms of like that product is so perfectly built for a paid media growth engine that like 98% of everything else can't do that. It won't work. And so I think the really understanding your underlying DNA as a business, like I use this metaphor a lot because I'm a shorter guy. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. And so when I thought about how I played baseball, right, I couldn't look at Albert Pujols, who was like one of the best players. He's 6'4", 240 pounds, and can hit a ball and play in a way I'll never be able to. So to replicate my game after his would have been a total waste of time. And so to understand what is true about the underlying attributes of your business is going to change the playbook that you have to run. And so we have this problem in our industry, which is we hold up these examples and they get like sort of broadly absorbed as like, that's the path. And it takes a lot to deconstruct whether or not you can actually replicate that in any way, because most people cannot, because their business just doesn't work like that.
My reminder to anyone, and to tag along that, is if you're a small business owner, maybe a solo operator, a small team, have a small team, you need to focus on the thing that brings you the most joy. So if you like writing, if you like video, if you like talking to people, find those marketing channels that highlight that, because business, frankly, is a grind. And if you hate the strategy and the tactics that you're implementing, you're not going to want to do it, and you're not going to be successful. It's already hard enough to do it if you love it. But doing it and you don't love it, it's just, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Joy is a fickle mistress, sir. You may have found it more persistently than I have, but that's a hard one. But I agree that moving through things that you don't hate is certainly more helpful than if you do.
I'll tell you, man, I got a lot of things figured out, Taylor. And a lot of things I don't got figured out. Yep, Facebook ads being one of
them. Well, you've got the lifestyle. You're in Denmark, by the way. I saw.
Yeah, Denmark for 5 weeks, and enough money in the bank account, and great people around me, and a business that doesn't make as much money as I want, but it makes enough right now for what I want. And I think there's a lesson that I stole from somebody else, but it's the guy with the Lambos and the Ferraris and the house and the billion-dollar company, and the person is saying, what do you have that I don't have? And he's, enough is the answer, and I think to a certain degree, it's at the end of the day, you have to define what you want out of your business. And what is going to bring you joy. And if you don't know what's going to bring you joy, don't just aimlessly go on this pathway, maybe keep things going, but spend that time and energy to figure out what is the joy you're seeking.
Yeah, I totally agree that there is the clearer you can get about why you're doing what you're doing. What is the end you seek in some way? And maybe it's the journey. I don't know, but I do think a lot of people wander without clarity of that. It sure makes being their partner hard, I say, as an external vendor too, is the amount of people who are like, I don't even understand what you're trying to accomplish. How can I help you? What's the game we're playing here is certainly.
Where can people follow you, learn from you, buy your services?
Yeah, I'm at Taylor Holiday on Twitter, commonthreadco.com. We'd be happy to jam. My DMs are open. I'm very grateful to that community and I'm active there. So just pop in, say hi. I'll do my best to respond promptly.
If you're not following Taylor at this point, I don't know what to tell you. That should be like the first thing you do.
Yeah, you may have muted me along the way. It's fair. Give me another shot. That's what I'd say.
I like the drama as it comes and goes. You learn a lot from drama. So
yeah,
guys, this has been another e-commerce conversations. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Cheers.
Thank you all.
Keep on growing.